For years, Michael Landon was the image of a gentle father and man of faith. But behind the smile, Michael Landon Jr. says, was a different life. Late-night disappearances, strange deliveries to the Malibu house, hidden photos, smoky parties with faces no one named. After nearly 40 years of silence, he broke it all open in an interview that stopped Hollywood cold. "They praise my father for his kindness," he said, "but it was deceit that kept him alive." That single line cracked a legend and revealed a private darkness television never showed. 1. My father never loved my mother. He never loved any woman, Michael Jr. said, his voice low in a Vanity Fair interview. At 60, eyes rimmed red, he spoke like someone finally laying down a burden. He wasn't merely unfaithful, he said. He had to betray himself to survive. The Landon house looked perfect from the outside, bright, well kept, the family portrait of Americana. Inside it felt cold. Birthday cakes were left untouched. He remembers his 1980 birthday. Candles burned out. His father smelled of a strange cologne, patted his shoulder, and went upstairs. No hug, no present, just a practiced smile for the cameras. Rumors shadowed the set. A young photographer, Eli Rosen, was never far from Landon's side, eating with him, leaving with him, whispering. In July 1979 in Utah, hotel staff reported the two leaving together in matching robes at dawn. NBC held closed meetings. Days later, Landon began appearing publicly with 18-year-old makeup artist Cindy Clerico. The papers ran the picture. Michael Landon's new love lights up Hollywood. The public accepted a tidy story. Michael Jr. didn't. When he kissed Cindy, it was for the cameras, not love, Michael Jr. said. When Cindy became pregnant in late 1982, the family hoped something had changed. Lynn, Michael's mother, moved out to protect the children. The press called it redemption. But in early 1983, Michael Jr. overheard his father on the phone. "Don't call again. We can't keep doing this." Not Cindy's name. Weeks later, Landon announced a rushed Valentine's Day wedding on a Malibu beach. The papers declared relief. Michael's diary called it what it was. He married out of fear. "I don't blame him for who he was," Michael Jr. said. "I blame him for lying to all of us to protect that image." After the wedding, Landon retreated further, distant, angry, drinking. He smiled on set when Cindy arrived. At home, he vanished. A handmade Christmas card was left unopened on the table. He drove away. "We had nothing left to say," Michael Jr. remembers. 2. "It wasn't my father anymore," Michael Jr. said. "It was someone living in the shadows." After leaving Lynn, Landon moved to a Malibu mansion where jazz played over the ocean, but the night smelled of scotch, cigarettes, and something chemical. He began smoking heavily and drinking constantly. Boxes and metal cases arrived late at night. Delivery men never spoke. The house became a refuge for strangers, men in dark suits, women like nightclub ghosts, and the air filled with smoke and secrecy. Michael remembers opening one package out of curiosity and finding a gray powder. Landon brushed it aside and told him, "Adult stuff. Never touch it." After that, the deliveries grew more frequent. Michael watched his father through a hallway as Landon disappeared into neon-lit rooms, laughing with people he didn't know. Once, through the smoke, he saw his father kiss a man. The sight broke him. Sober mornings brought a different man, distant, fragile. "Do you hear the waves, son?" his father would ask, looking lost. But the spiral continued. Michael found him one night, slumped amid foil and glass tubes, white residue glittering on the desk. Landon murmured, "I'm fine. Just need a little energy." Rumors proliferated, unmarked cars, late arrivals, and tabloids circled. NBC stayed quiet. Insiders whispered that the star was in deep trouble. Years later, after Lynn's death, Michael found a letter she'd kept. "You married that girl to protect your image, not your heart." She had known and stayed silent for the family's sake. Michael Jr. says he no longer feels anger, only pity. He can watch Little House on the Prairie and see his father's practiced smile, beautiful but strangely sad. "I'm not telling this to destroy him," he says. "I'm telling it so people understand that behind Hollywood perfection, there's often a human being quietly falling apart. And that," he warns quietly, "was only the beginning. The secret that kept him silent for decades and finally shattered the myth of America's ideal father." For Michael Jr., the deepest hurt wasn't the funeral, but the slow erasure that began years earlier. Calls that once mattered became, "Which Michael?" Night after night, his father disappeared into coughing fits, whiskey, and smoke. One morning on the Malibu steps, bottle at his side and an old photograph in hand, he asked, "Do you think I ever loved anyone?" The question had no answer. What stared back was a man who no longer believed in love. The lights and applause hid a different life. On set, he could be sunshine, laughing, storytelling, lifting everyone. Then, after a drink, a menace. He'd bark a direction, slam the script, and silence the room. Crew learned to move like glass around him. Cameras, props, even people bore the cost when his mood shifted. The tears he sometimes shed were real, but for his own wounds, not the scene. Favoritism deepened the tension. A young makeup artist entered his inner circle and access turned into influence. Jealousies festered and small slights became eruptions. Senior actresses skirted him. Whispered complaints were swallowed by fear. The show that promised family warmth was often a place of tight-lipped caution. Off camera, the image hardened into a brand. After Highway to Heaven, he became a public symbol of faith and family, an icon at fundraisers and power lunches. But Michael Jr. says the sheen masked deals and direction his father no longer fully believed in. Aides hinted at compromised partnerships. Pundits began to ask whether the man selling moral certainty had grown entangled in influence. By the late 1980s, fame and ambition had recast him into someone Michael Jr. barely recognized. Polished speeches, rehearsed lines about family, a campaign for respectability that felt staged. Once an artist of feeling, he'd become a performer of virtue. The more he insisted on being spotless, the more people doubted the smile. When illness finally claimed him, the public mourned a hero. Michael Jr. watched the portrait, the hair, the practiced smile, and felt only relief that the performance was over. "My father wanted to be loved," he said, "but he never learned how to love anyone for real." That, he believes, is the real tragedy, a life that never escaped its roles. Grief did something else, too. On the Malibu steps, he replayed moments, the kindnesses and the silences, realizing memory is never clean. He began to speak differently, refusing to let the neat legend stand untouched. In interviews, he warned young actors that applause can hollow you if you let it stand in for belonging. He pushed for safer sets, transparent complaint processes, and protections for crew. It was dull, bureaucratic work, but it mattered. He changed the way he loved. Where his father clung to image, Michael Jr. learned to stay. He answered calls. He showed up for people who weren't useful to his career. He taught his children to ask hard questions and to listen for imperfect answers. He let relationships be ordinary. Late dinners, awkward apologies, small, consistent gestures that built trust over time. Forgiveness, he discovered, was practical rather than mystical. It did not mean forgetting. It meant refusing the small cruelties his father modeled and choosing, again and again, a different script. He built a life that kept the lessons and shed the costume. Years later, standing on those same steps, Michael Jr. watched a young crew gather to film and felt something like peace. Not because the past had been neatly resolved, but because he had chosen another story. It was quieter than fame and richer for it. He had become proof that what we inherit need not become what we hand down.